Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Rabbi F. Schwartz podcast. Today we're continuing part 2 with Jake Pentland. Phenomenal show we had last week, and people really like it very much. So tonight we're presenting part 2. I would like everyone please to watch it and comment if you like, and please subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely right, because we have a podcast coming out today. The audio is already out, but my mom and I's next episode drops relatively soon. And we talk about this. And I theorize, and I think my mom agrees, that Biden literally is trying to start a nuclear war because they don't want Trump to take power. We already won the election. And I think that is what they're doing. And I think it's not just that they don't want Trump to take over. I think they're afraid, like the Epstein client list and the Diddy list and all that stuff. Like Matt Gaetz just dropped out of the AG running, which is a bummer. I really liked him, but you could tell that they were going after him pretty hard. So they're terrified. It's not just that a Republican's in office. It's that they know that we're coming, and we're gonna look under the hood, and we're gonna check the receipts, and we're gonna look into the 2020 election, and we're gonna look into all this stuff. That I think they're gonna try and burn it all down. I really do, which scares me.
Yeah.
But you're right. That is what most likely what they're doing. Instead of they keep talking about a peaceful transition of power.
Right.
But that's not a peaceful transition of power when you start a nuclear war. It's pretty much the opposite. So yeah, I don't know. I'm scared of that too. Part of me thinks like sometimes I get too out there with conspiracies, and maybe it's just, normal warfare stuff, and Trump can come in and negotiate a peace deal, and maybe it's nothing. But to do something overt that Putin is basically saying, I can now use nuclear weapons, to do that when you're going out, when you lost the election, that's just insanity. Imagine if Trump did that in 2020 when they bring up January 6th all the time, like he was trying to steal the election. It's like, no, he was trying to not let an illegal election get certified because we knew you cheated. And he still walked away peacefully and handed the keys to the White House over. But imagine if Trump, instead of Jan 6, where you had a couple hundred people, getting a little bit of a scuffle into a public building. Imagine if he started a nuclear war.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's what they're doing.
Your point is very well taken, because the truth of the matter is, if Trump was a Hitler, he had all the opportunity in 2020 to take the American Army, to take the Navy, take the Air Force, and basically turn the whole country in one gigantic totalitarian state. He had all the opportunity to do it. That's what Hitler did, Yeah. And in fact, what did Hitler do in 1933? 1933 was elected democratically. All of a sudden, the Reichstag got burned down, right? The truth of the matter is, he really got the SS people to burn the Reichstag. And then he said, well, it's the communists, so you have to declare emergency law. So he could have done the same thing. He didn't do that. He had the opportunity to do that. He didn't do that. That shows that for sure shows who the man is. And the fact that now he's coming out with new ways to create people to come together and have people unite and so forth. And he even invited Joe Scarborough, Morning Joe, to his house.
Yeah. I saw that.
Ridiculous,
well,
right?
RFK, Tulsi, Nicole Shanahan,
That's incredible.
Myself, my mom, Elon Musk. These are all former Democrats.
Yes, right.
That left the Democrat Party because the Democrat Party was doing evil stuff, and that's why we left. So, I mean, the Trump is Hitler thing is it's so juvenile, and it pains me that I have to have arguments, and I have these people in my family that is their argument, and they think it's a good argument, and it's literally the dumbest argument you can make. It shows that you have first of all, you have no historical reference. You don't even know what Hitler was.
Right.
And second, that you're just parroting a talking point by corporations that are controlling your mind through the legacy media, and that you don't even have a shred of dignity to go, oh, I'm going to try and think for myself. Like the fact that you're parroting a bad statement, a stupid statement, shows that you're stupid. And then to continually argue over the years, and then when every other, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, when you point to well, Trump could have done this, I wanted him to seize the voting machines in 2019 and do martial law. I wanted that, and he wouldn't even do that. And it's you could prove that they cheated. He wouldn't even do that. Tried to do court cases and say that the way they went about the election was illegal. He didn't even didn't even push for that, which even like a low-level moderate Hitler type would have done. He didn't even do that. So you're arguing with people that are their argument is like embarrassing.
Yes.
And I argue still to this day with people who don't like Trump. Some of these people are very smart, and the reasons they don't like Trump are smart. And I love those people. We'll talk all day, we'll argue. You don't have to vote for Trump. You're absolutely right with what you think. Those people all day, those are moderate, real Democrats. I love them. We'll agree to disagree. They never make the Hitler reference. They never say things that legacy media parrots. They understand the propaganda is a part of it. They're intelligent, rational people. I don't need you to like Trump. I don't need you to agree with me on everything. But if your disagreement is stupid, like, and embarrassingly stupid, I have no respect for you at all. And I don't even want to argue because I have to lower myself. Like that old saying, when you argue with an idiot, you have to lower yourself to argue with an idiot. So who's the idiot? Who's the idiot?
True.
So whenever I hear Trump, and my advice to you, because you say you deal with this in Israel too with the lefties there, like whenever they do the Trump is Hitler, I say don't even argue with them. Just go, oh, okay, well, you're below the threshold of intelligence. Mm-hmm. You're not even at a level where I want to talk to you. You're so dumb. Right. So come back to me in a few years when you get past that. Like I said, it's like your first beer at 13 years old. Like I remember my first beer too. Come to me when you can handle a fifth of whiskey and we'll talk.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely
driving me crazy.
No, it's true. I mean, when Trump had the opportunity, as mentioned before, and look, people say that probably the greatest president in the United States, or one of the greatest presidents, was Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln was a dictator. He used the form of military emergency in order to prevent the break of the Union. He was a dictator, and he used emergency force to preserve the Union. Right? Now,
that's a good point. Never thought about that.
Now, that being the case, then his overall idea was to save the Union. Right? Now, think about it this way: Trump didn't have the political will that Lincoln had, because Lincoln was really a man of politics and of power. Trump is a man of business, and he himself admits that he didn't understand what his politics was all about. Politics and business, different things. To be a person of politics, you have to understand power, how to use power. And how power is manipulated in terms of different types of aspects. Example, how did Poland become part of Russia? How did it do that? Was because the Yalta meeting between Stalin and Roosevelt and Churchill was what happened was Stalin knew very well that Roosevelt was already old and sick, so he made him travel around different parts of the country by flight to come to Yalta, knowing that what happened would be that Roosevelt would be very, very tired. And when he came to meet Stalin didn't let Roosevelt sleep because he said, let's talk now. What happened was it came to such a point where he was so exhausted, never he was always a very sick man, they said, listen, what about Poland? He was so exhausted, he said, fine, take Poland. So he knew how to manipulate people. That's the person that knows power and so forth, and manipulate power. These people stand power. Trump doesn't, even though he knows business, he doesn't understand power. Now maybe he understands power. Meaning what? Had he been Lincoln and understood the concept of power and what he could do in terms of government and how to place one against the other, maybe he would have controlled and declared martial law. But he didn't. Now, because he didn't do that, what was the outcome? Biden came in, became president, and a few months later, what happened? Afghanistan fell. Right. So all the women now who are suffering in Afghanistan is because of Biden. All because the women are suffering because of Biden. All because of the Keystone Pipeline because of Biden. So much terrible things happen all because Trump didn't use his power. Right. That shows a man who basically is a good man. He's not a Hitler type. As opposed to now, what's happening, a World War II, III can start because people who believe in power want to keep it to such an extent.
Yeah.
So the question is, what do we do next, right? What do we do next? How do you, and the point before you mentioned is identity. The people don't want to lose their identity. They're telling these Democrats, these left wing, and you and I were once Democrats. We all woke up. So
I did.
Now, how do you wake up? So I made a video. I don't know if I sent it to you, saying that how can Elon Musk and Gubbard and the Tulsi Gubbard and also with Bobby F. Kennedy, all these smart people, all of a sudden would want to align with a criminal, with a Nazi. Obviously, he's not a Nazi, right?
Right. Yes.
From experience, what do you think that can be done within, let's say, the realm of media, where we can get people in the media to finally become courageous enough and say, enough's enough. We got to tell the truth. We're not willing to sacrifice the truth for the sake of the buck. And many of them are selling their souls for the sake of the buck.
That is what it is. I mean, I remember, again, back in the 90s when I was in high school. I only bring this up not to show like how smart I was, but just so people understand my evolution to where I am now, what I saw and what I was right about. I remember in high school writing a paper about the dangers of 24-hour cable news, because this was kind of a relatively new thing back in the early 90s, 80s. I think TNT, Turner Broadcast, TBS something, CNN, it was Ted Turner started it. And everyone was like, no one's going to watch the news for 24 hours. And it started to do well. But of course, what they realized is, you can't just tell the news because that's boring. But if you make the news interesting, well, now you have ratings and viewership. Well, now you can sell ad space and you can generate income. So the news that day went from, when we talk about Walter Cronkite or the old Washington Post, with All the President's Men or all these great journalists, it became more important to be a profit center for corporations. And then the corporations started buying up massive airspace to now it's only 6 corporations that control all media. And in order for them to do that, well, they're beholden to their stockbroker. So the very nature of cable news, 24-hour news, is to be profitable. It's not to tell the truth. And I saw that as very, very dangerous, because in the old days, like I loved All the President's Men, one of my favorite movies as a kid. That was about taking down Nixon and Watergate. And that was actual journalism. Mm-hmm. And it used to be just enough to do journalism. You're telling the truth. That's all. That's the payment. Yeah. Woodrow and Bernstein, they had a car and an office. They had a salary, but they weren't talking heads. They weren't like, Tucker Carlson level celebrities. They were just doing their job. They wanted to tell the truth, and they did. And that's what a journalist should do. It should be motivated by the truth. They're not. No, there aren't really any journalists. They're citizen journalists. And I'm going to answer your question. I'm getting to that point. But anyway, so what happened was news became entertainment. And it became a profit center to sell ad space. That's why Pfizer buys every ad on CNN. That's why when COVID happened, you weren't allowed to take ivermectin or question it, because Pfizer was paying the airspace for the people telling you that you're a horrible person. So what ended up happening, like all free market societies, and why I love the free market, is journalism, independent journalists went to Twitter, which is now X, and Facebook, and all political spectrums, and they just went back to, hey, I'm going to tell the truth. Because they had real jobs. They just were like, this is weird. And this whole citizen journalist thing started, podcasts started, independent media started. People like Tim Pool is a great example. He was a Democrat. He's now a Trump supporter. He was at Occupy Wall Street. He was one of the early guys at Vice Media. And he slowly became more independent and red-pilled himself, but when he saw what the legacy media was doing. So to answer your question, what's the next step? It's already happened. It's podcasting, it's independent journalism, it's social media, and it's us being smart and brave. And for instance, when YouTube started shutting us down because they're owned by Google, and that's one of the 6 companies, Rumble came up. We went to Rumble. And you have to, it's just like my thing I said to you earlier about, I'm always going to be right. Like, we're always going to win, because if they buy Rumble, which it looks like BlackRock is one of the biggest investors in Rumble now, they went public. They're starting to buy Rumble to shut it down. We'll find another place. We will never stop. We will always tell the truth. We'll put our asses on the line. We'll always podcast. And you can see that it was very, very dark at one point where the Democrat legacy media did own social media. They were throwing us off. And Elon Musk, who I love, put his money where his mouth was, his ass on the line. He bought Twitter, turned it to X, and you could see that that was kind of the beginning of the fall of the cabal, because that was one thing that they didn't control. And then truth came. And the truth will always win. God will always win. And we're always going to win, because when we're stopped, when corporations come, we've all read Orwell. We all know our history. We're all people of faith. From one level to the other, truth is paramount.
Right.
That's not going to stop. And they're not going to stop us. They're never going to stop us. They can take the internet. They can shut the internet down and cut the big wire. We'll go out and we'll talk in pubs like the revolutionaries did. We'll do whatever it takes. So they're not going to win. What they're going to do is they're going to keep doing propaganda. They're going to keep trying to turn us against our neighbor. They're going to try and turn us against our family members. They're going to try and turn kids against their parents. They're going to do propaganda and mind control and that kind of stuff. And we have to just deal with that. We don't have to deal with the information. We control the information now. The revolution will be televised and it will be posted on social media. But what you have to do, instead of saying, how do we get the truth out there? Truth is already out there. What we have to do is, how do I keep from hating my stupid sister who thinks Kamala was a good presidential candidate? Because that's the real war now. Mm-hmm. You have to go, okay, I love them. I love my neighbor like myself. They're under an assault of propaganda. They're not yet free. They don't go on the podcast I listen to. They're listening to CNN. They think ivermectin is horse paste, and they don't even know it won the Nobel Prize. Like, right. I want them to be free of their mind control, and I'm just going to send them love and try and talk to them. I think that's what I don't know how to do that, because every time I try, I end up just getting mad. But I think that's the next war, the next front in this war, is us getting to our friends and families members that are under mind control and that are in a cult, and breaking them free of that cult in a loving way.
Looking for a holiday read that will change your outlook on life? Through Fire and Water is a gripping tale of redemption, love, and suspense. This thriller will have you hooked from start to finish. For more information, click the link in the description.
Yeah, it's true. It's a real cult. You mentioned before Rumble. When you made Rumble, we said Rumble. It reminds me of two people. I think you should have this. You should have them on your podcast. One is Tomer Tamarican. Another is what's his name? Bud Bromley. These two people, I know them very well. They literally have the smoking gun on climate change. You'll love them, because they do. Remember the special that the volcano that erupted many years ago in Manitoba? So they just realized, and they made a study, and Tomer Tamarican spent thousands of dollars showing from the studying of the amount of CO2 that was in the area, and nothing changed. And according to Henry's law, CO2 cannot be affected by man's type of emissions. So basically, all of this has been proven, and he has the data, and I'll send to you. And I've been associated with him. And we said Rumble. What happened was he went to Rumble in order to prove and show his findings that he has made over the years. He's one of the people back in 1980s started AI in terms of music and so forth. So I'll send you his website. Okay. And also, you mentioned before about the idea of Kamala, right? That, your sister loves Kamala. So I saw recently a video, and that blew my mind, and I had to make a response to it. The truancy law that she made in California, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. To an extent that she was arresting single dads and single moms, and even moms who had children in the hospital. And the reason why, and she says, with the stroke of the pen, I learned I can make the most simplest law and ruin your life. That's what she says. I can ruin a person's life and make them lose their job, make them lose their name, have them evicted, and so forth. Right? Yeah. And then she says, and why? Not because you think for the sake of the child. And she said, because why? The state was losing money. So it's because of money, she ruined people's lives. So I made a video about that, saying basically Kamala is an evil person. That's evil to me. That's evil. It is
terribly evil. And she also, that's why I love Tulsi Gabbard. If you remember back in 2019, 2020, before they cheated and gave Biden the nomination, the Democratic Party, Tulsi was running, Kamala was running. Kamala didn't get any votes, had to drop out. But Tulsi destroyed Kamala. And it's one of the greatest moments in American history because she did talk about that. She talked about how Kamala was actually hiding, I can never pronounce this word right, exculpatory or whatever evidence, something that would have gotten an innocent man out of jail. She was burying it so he'd stay in jail because she needed the labor force. And she talks, Kamala basically admits it. So it's like, that you're a slaver. You're using cheap labor, people in prison because they're cheaper labor. That's slavery.
Right.
In so many words. And you're putting innocent people in there just because you want to make a buck.
Right.
That's as evil as it gets. And yeah, she was running and everyone's like, oh, Kamala, Mamala, she's a brave woman. And I'm like, what are you talking about? First of all, the bill that she used for a lot of that stuff was the crime bill of 1994, which Biden wrote, that was responsible for jailing thousands, hundreds of thousands of black men in California. They were literally jailing black people and then running a campaign about how she's, Trump's Hitler.
Right.
And she's the black person and she's a slaver. And Trump was actually, when he was president, you can look it up, he was overturning a lot of these laws. He got a couple of wrongfully convicted black people released. He was doing crime reform. He was undoing the works of Biden and Kamala from the 90s. And now he's Hitler. And that's how you know he's not Hitler, because the people that are calling him Hitler are Hitler.
That's right. Exactly.
Exactly. Or slave owners. It's so it makes me sick. She's horrible. But anyway, Rumble, that video went around. I saw it.
Yeah.
Del Bigtree, a super PAC who was an RFK supporter, made a tremendous campaign video that we helped go viral, millions of views. And I think a lot of people saw it. And I think it broke through enough of the brainwashing bullshit for people to go, yeah, Kamala is not a good person.
No, not at all.
Biden's not a good person.
Not at all. No, not one bit. And with Kamala, she's a chameleon. And with black people, she's black. With Indian, she's Indian. I was expecting it to be trans with trans people. She never went to that level yet. Right?
Yeah, they're my favorite memes. Yeah, no, it was like new Kamala accent just dropped.
Exactly. Remember when she went to the black church and freedom will come down? Right? Oh, come on, that was ridiculous.
Did you ever see AOC when she was in a black room? She's like, "This is what civil rights look like." It's like blackface, and then we're the racists just because we're like, "Hey, no, that's not true." Can you imagine if Trump got on stage and was like talking in blackface? Mm-hmm. He'd be ruined.
Right.
Anyway, the hypocrisy gets to me.
Hypocrisy. Now, we always see in movies, especially people who read Shakespeare and so forth, and people who've studied the different characters in history, the person who's always evil always will call you evil, and will always himself be the righteous person because they are on the attack. As the best defense is offense, right? If you're offending a thing, you're always saying he's rotten, and meanwhile he's manipulating situations so well that you don't even see the sleight of hand. Yeah, so they were using those tactics all the time, always saying that he's bad, he's Hitler. Meanwhile, they were doing all the terrible things and coming up as innocent. That's exactly the same.
If second chances intrigue you, the quest Get Back Your Ex is a must-watch. 6 broken lives, 1 redemption journey. This show is packed with emotion, suspense, and love. Learn more by clicking on the link in the description below.
It is. And remember, they were saying Trump's a threat to democracy when Kamala didn't get a single vote for the nomination, and that they were trying to jail Trump. They're still doing. They're using lawfare. They convicted him as a felon on something that's unheard of in our court system, a crime that's never even been tried. They changed it from a misdemeanor to a felony a week before they charged him, literally to get him so that they could say he was a convicted felon because they thought that would hurt his campaign. And they were so stupid. Like, we all saw it and go, okay, now you're making us want to vote for Trump more.
Right.
But while they would do that, they would go, Trump is Hitler, and if he gets in power, he's going to use the government to go against his political opponents. And I was like, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And they were powerful because they were in line with powerful forces like the media, like the Department of Justice and the World Economic Forum and all these huge zillion dollar industries. But they were arrogant because they didn't realize, like, you still have to be smart about your tactics. Like, you can't make it obvious that you're a moron. Mm-hmm. Like, you may have Beyonce show up and dance and fill an arena because everyone thinks Beyonce is going to come. But we know that 70,000 people aren't there to see Kamala.
Right.
And they thought that would work. And it was like, they're really not, they're powerful because they're evil. They're not powerful because they're smart. And that campaign was the worst. I mean, Trump's campaign in 2023, 24, was the greatest campaign I have ever seen in any public office in my life, if we're telling the truth. And there was two assassination attempts on top of it.
Yeah.
Like, taking out the assassination attempts, the McDonald's stunt, the garbage stunt, where he would go on, who he would debate, how he would talk, going on Rogan's podcast. Kamala was hiding. She wouldn't take questions. ABC got caught feeding her questions. And, like all the stuff they did, it was just so sloppy. We all saw it. And she ran the worst campaign I ever saw. Kamala was the worst. And I used to say Hillary Clinton was the worst, but after seeing Kamala, I'm like, okay, Hillary was the second worst.
Yeah.
Because at least she could answer questions. I mean, Hillary stood in front of Congress about Benghazi for hours and answered. I mean, the stuff she couldn't answer, she took a hammer to her cell phone and bleach bit everything. She lied, but at least she was slick about it.
Right.
Kamala was an idiot. And the fact that people got behind that thinking Trump was Hitler and Kamala was going to save the day is just, that's the worst campaign I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's true.
And it was still close.
Yeah, that's amazing. It was a terrible campaign. When she was asked, what would you do different? She said, you do nothing different. It's exactly what they want to hear. They already had 4 years of a terrible situation of being under Biden. So you're doing the same exact thing.
It was so dumb. Yeah. And then she was running for I'm going to change it. When I get in office, I'm going to change. And J.D. Vance is a brilliant politician. And he said, why don't you do it now?
Right.
And instead of her going, well, I'm just the vice president, Biden's in charge. She was like, I don't know, I wouldn't change anything. And then Biden, I think, I have to get going soon, but I'm going to leave you with one conspiracy theory of my mom's, which I think might be true.
Yeah.
And this also comes on our podcast tonight. She thinks Biden was flipped, an asset of Trump, because Trump had dirt on him. And if you remember, his son left a laptop, his daughter left a diary, showing all sorts of nefarious activities. Mm-hmm. And it's just my mom's theory, but she thinks Biden was flipped and became an asset of Trump and Trump's cronies because they had him dead to rights. They had him in his crimes and the 10% of the big guy and Hunter Biden and all this stuff. Because if you remember, we had all the momentum of the campaign, and then there was this Madison Square Garden rally, and Tony Hinchcliffe is a friend of ours, got up and told some Puerto Rican jokes, and this was just before the election, like the Saturday before, and it gave the Democrats back momentum that they had lost because Kamala was the worst candidate ever, and they're teasing Puerto Ricans, and it was a little scary for me because I know how dumb liberals are and how brainwashed they are. I go, oh my God, they're going to think Trump's putting on an anti-Puerto Rican party and blaming Puerto Ricans and teasing them because they're that stupid. And it plays into the Trump is Hitler. And it was a bad optics. And immediately, hours after, Biden got on and said, the only people that are garbage are Trump supporters, and basically called 80 million people in America garbage. Immediately stopped, took the momentum back, gave it back to Trump. He also said a few weeks before, or a month before, when Kamala was surging in the polls, if you do believe that, he said they were questioning Biden, and they were saying, Kamala says, she wasn't really in charge. She's going to change it. And he's like, no, I trusted her. I gave her absolute power. She was very heavily involved in every decision. Both those things really hurt Kamala to the point where Biden, the last week, they basically told him, you can't even talk to the press. Don't Biden. He wasn't invited to the election party. And those two acts might have cost Kamala the election because they were going to cheat. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why Biden would have done that. So my mom's theory that Biden was flipped, that there's some credence to it. It might have been like,
and also
and he hated her.
And the coup they did against him. They did a coup against him. He's a man, 50 years. They just took him, they stabbed him in his back, right? Like it's a Roman tragedy. And just like seeing basically Julius Caesar, Ute, and they killed him, basically. Without any compassion, nothing.
So I hope that's true. And if that is true, then I don't think we need to put Biden in prison. We can call that even. Thank you for saving the world, Biden. And thank you so much for letting me ramble
Beautiful,
incoherently for an hour.
It was brilliant. Shabbat shalom, brother.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.